Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on my channel. About 4 months ago, I set up a vivarium for a group of 6 ivory millipedes, and this has been the first time that I've ever cared for any millipedes, and I've been surprised at how much I've enjoyed them. It might be different with other species of millipedes, but the ivory millipedes are very active and almost always out and about in their vivarium. And they're such beautiful and fascinating creatures. And as the title says, I have good news and I have bad news. So I'll start with the bad news first. And if you watch the video all the way through, I'll get to the good news. So I was really disappointed when several weeks ago I discovered that one of the millipedes had died. And then a few days after that, a second one had died. I really don't know what caused these 2 millipedes to die. I did a lot of research on their husbandry and care, and I've worked hard to ensure their environment was exactly right. The heat and humidity has been exactly right. I've kept a moderate level of moisture in the substrate without it being too wet. I've given them plenty of rotting wood and leaves to eat, as well as feeding them carrots and cucumbers about once a week. I've also added some crushed eggshells into their diet for calcium. I've now spent time going back and reviewing all of the research I had previously done, and the only thing I can do for the 4 remaining millipedes is keep trying to get the husbandry dialed in as best as I can. I believe I had an even number of males and females, so I was hoping they would eventually breed. As the millipedes eat, they poop a lot. It looks like little balls of dirt, and they call that frass. And I've learned that the frass is important for baby millipedes because they eat that and it helps their immune systems. And I was advised to leave a certain amount of the frass in the enclosure. Well, after about 4 months, they've eaten more than half of the rotten log that the vivarium was centered around, and there's at least an inch-thick layer of frass all around it. So I decided to refresh this vivarium with some new wood and substrate. I haven't seen any baby millipedes yet, but I know there may be eggs, so I'm going to keep a certain amount of the old substrate along with some of the frass as I do that. The first thing I needed to do was move the millipedes into a temporary safe place. Then I began carefully removing the contents of the vivarium, keeping a close eye in case there might actually be babies. And I didn't see any babies. I didn't add isopods because isopods can eat the millipedes' eggs, but there's still a healthy colony of springtails. And even though I didn't add any isopods, I see that there are some baby isopods, so some must have hitchhiked their way in here. For substrate, I've used my regular ABG mix, but added quite a bit of rotting wood, leaf litter, and some sand. And I made it deep enough for plenty of room for the millipedes to burrow into. I wondered if the deaths had to do with the substrate. Maybe I got it too wet. But I did feel the substrate, and it was still in good condition. It was nice and fluffy. And it also felt like the amount of moisture in the substrate was good. It was damp, but not too wet. So I decided to keep the substrate as it was and just mixed the frass into it. I basically set it up in a similar way to what I did before. I used a big piece of cork bark in the middle, and around that I crumbled up the remains of the old rotting wood, and I added a good amount of leaf litter around that. I like the way this looks, and I think it's a good replication of the forest floor where these millipedes come from. Hopefully, the remaining 4 millipedes will continue to thrive in here. So I did say I had some good news too. And for that, I have to fast forward another 2 weeks after setting up this new vivarium. I've been a little paranoid after the 2 millipedes died, so I've been keeping a very close eye on the remaining 4 to make sure they're doing all right. And suddenly one night, dozens and dozens of tiny baby millipedes emerged out of the substrate. They're so small, no bigger than the size of a fruit fly larva. It was such an exciting thing to discover and such a mix of emotions after feeling sad for the ones that died. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch these tiny babies grow, and I'll be continuing the research to make sure I'm prepared for any special care that baby millipedes might need. And it looks like I'll need to be making a bigger vivarium for them, so I'm sure there will be some update videos on that in the future. So for now, I'll leave you with some footage of these beautiful creatures and their new setup. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.